The rules my family kept. Part 1. My family had always had rules, not the kind written down anywhere, not the kind you could trace back to a single person who decided them. They were older than that, the kind of rules that exist in a family the way the shape of a nose exists in a family. Passed down without discussion, present before you thought to question them, so familiar by the time you were old enough to wonder about them that wondering felt almost disrespectful. I grew up in a hollow in Watauga County, North Carolina. My people have been in these mountains for 230 years. I know that because my great-aunt Cora kept the records. Births and deaths and marriages in a ledger that smelled like cedar and old leather. And the first entry is dated 1791. A man named Elias Pruitt, who came over the ridge from Virginia with a wife, 2 sons, and a mule, and built a cabin on the creek that still bears his name. Every generation since has stayed within 20 miles of that original cabin. My father was born in a house 2 ridges over. His father was born in the same house. I was born in a hospital in Boone because my mother had complications, and my grandmother treated that fact with a quiet suspicion for the rest of her life, as though being born inside a town instead of on the mountain had altered something in me she could not quite identify. Maybe she was right. The rules. I should tell you the rules first, because they are the shape of everything that comes after. Do not go into the woods above the second ridge after dark. Do not call out into the hollow at night for any reason. Not to find a dog. Not to call someone home for supper. You go to the door, and you ring the bell. If you hear your name spoken from outside at night, and there is no one on the porch, you do not answer, and you do not look. Do not follow the lights. If the dogs stop barking, you come inside. Do not sleep with the windows open in October. And the last one, the one my grandmother said with a different quality in her voice than she used for the others, the one she made me repeat back every year on my birthday, from the time I was 5 until the time I was 17 and left for college. If it looks like someone you know, but something is wrong with the way it moves, it is not someone you know. You do not speak to it. You do not run. You look at the ground and you walk home, and you do not look back, and you do not speak of what you saw until morning. I asked her once where the rules came from. I must have been 8 years old. She was shelling beans on the porch. She did not stop shelling beans. She said, "They came from the people who were here before us, who got them from the people who were here before them. And those people got them from the land itself. The rules are not ours. We are just keeping them until someone else needs them." I did not understand what that meant until I was 34 years old and came back to the hollow after my father died and found out what he had never told me. My father died in March. Heart attack, quick, no warning. He was 61 years old and had never been sick a day in his life. And then he was gone between one Tuesday and the next. I drove up from Charlotte, where I had been living for 11 years, doing the kind of work that requires a city and a degree and a deliberate forgetting of where you came from. I had not been back to the hollow in 4 years. My wife thought I was estranged from my family. I was not estranged. I just did not know how to exist in both places at once. The city had slowly become the real place, and the hollow had become something I carried around like a photograph in a wallet. Present, folded, not looked at often. Coming back after 4 years and a death is a particular kind of violence. Everything is exactly as you left it and completely transformed. The same porch, the same creek on the second step, the same smell of wood smoke and creek water and the specific mineral cold that comes off these mountains in March, like the mountains themselves are exhaling. My mother had aged. My Aunt Ruth had aged. The house had not aged at all. We buried my father on the hill behind the house, next to his father and his father's father, and 6 generations of Pruitts going back to Elias himself. The preacher said the words. We went back to the house and ate food the neighbors had brought, and nobody said what they were thinking, which is what you do. That night, after everyone had gone, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. She said there was something my father had been meaning to tell me, something he had kept meaning to tell me and had run out of time. She put a box on the table. Old wood, no latch. Inside was a journal in my father's handwriting. She said, "Read it tonight, all of it, and then we will talk in the morning." My father was not a writer. He was a mechanic and a gardener and a deacon at the Baptist church on Route 105. He expressed himself through the things he built and fixed and grew, not through sentences, but the journal was 312 pages. He had been writing it for 20 years, since I was 14 years old, since the year he went up above the second ridge. He had broken the first rule. He wrote that he had not meant to. He had been tracking a wounded deer, following the blood trail, and had not noticed how high he had climbed until the light changed. In the mountains, the light changes fast in November. 1 minute it is afternoon, and the next minute the sun drops behind the western ridge, and everything goes the color of a bruise and then goes dark. He wrote that he felt something he did not have a word for. Not fear exactly. More like the feeling of having stepped through a door and heard it close behind you. Not threatening, just final. A change of state. Before and after. He stood still, and then he heard it. He wrote, "I heard the hollow speak. I know how that sounds. I am not a man who talks that way. I want to be clear, I am not describing wind or an animal." The hollow spoke. There were words, not in English, not in any language I have heard before or since, but structured the way language is structured, with weight and pause and emphasis. I understood none of it, but I understood it was words, and I understood it was not addressing me. It was speaking to the mountain. He stood and listened for what felt like 10 minutes, and also no time at all. Then it stopped. Then he came down. He did not tell his father. He did not tell his mother. He did not tell anyone for 20 years, because something had been happening since that night that he needed to put somewhere outside himself before he died. I sat at the kitchen table, reading until the sun came up. The last entry was dated 2 weeks before he died. It said only this: "Tell him to go up to the second ridge, not past it, just to it. Stand at the line and listen. He will know when to stop, and he will know when to come down." He was born in a hospital in a town, and I always thought that meant the mountain did not have its mark on him. I was wrong. I can hear it when I listen. The mountain has been waiting for him specifically. I do not know what that means. I am not afraid of what it means. I am only sorry I am not going to be there when it happens. Before I tell you what happened on the ridge, I need to tell you what my father heard for 30 years after the night he broke the first rule. He could hear things he could not previously hear, not better hearing, not sharper ears, something else entirely. He wrote, "It is as if a channel opened that had been closed my whole life. I can hear the mountain the way you can hear a conversation in the next room, not the words, the tone, the intention." He wrote that he knew from that tone things he could not have known. He knew 3 days before it happened that his neighbor Clarence Aldridge was going to die. Not sick, not old, just gone. He knew it the way you know a storm is coming from the smell of the air. He drove to Clarence's house, and they sat on the porch and drank coffee, and he did not say what he knew, because there were no words for it, and because he understood, without knowing how, that it was not his to interfere with. Clarence died in his sleep 2 nights later. Peaceful. No explanation. My father wrote, "I do not think I caused it. I do not think I was warned so I could prevent it. I think I was told the way you tell a child something is going to happen so the child is not alone in their fear of it. Whatever opened in me that night above the ridge does not give me power. It gives me company." He wrote about 30 years of this. Small knowings, tonal warnings, the mountain communicating through him the way a radio receives something it did not generate. He wrote, "I have come to understand that the rules were not protective in the way I always thought. They were not there to keep us safe from what is in these mountains. They were there to keep us from being changed too fast, from receiving too much before we were ready to hold it. Not everyone comes back from that opening able to carry it quietly. Some people are not built for the weight of deep knowing. It does not destroy them, but it changes the way they move through the world, the way a heavy pack changes the way you walk, and some people were not made to walk that way. I want to be precise about what I did and did not do. I did not go past the second ridge. I drove up the mountain road at noon on a clear April day, 2 weeks after the funeral. I parked where the road ends and walked the trail my father had walked 1,000 times, the one I had walked with him as a boy, up through the hemlocks and the rhododendron and the old chestnuts that should not still be alive, but are, because these mountains keep things that should not survive. I stopped at the second ridge. I stood there for a long time. Below me was the hollow where my family had lived for 230 years. Above me was whatever my father had walked into on a November evening and carried inside him until the day he died. It was quiet the way the hollow is never quiet. The birds had stopped. The wind had stopped. Even the creek, which I could normally hear from here, was silent. And then I heard it. I am not going to describe what I heard because I do not have the language for it, and because I think the description would be less true than the silence I leave around it. I will say only that my father was right. It was not addressing me. It was the mountain speaking to itself, the way mountains have been speaking to themselves since before there were ears to hear them, and I happened to be standing at the frequency. I listened for a long time. Then I came down. I live in Charlotte still. I have my work and my wife and my life that I built deliberately far from the hollow. I have not moved back, and I do not plan to move back. But something opened in me that afternoon on the ridge. I feel it the way you feel a window slightly ajar, a constant small awareness of air moving through a space that was previously sealed. I know things sometimes, not useful things, not lottery numbers or stock prices, just the deep tonal things. A friend I have not spoken to in 2 years will call, and I will know before the phone rings, and I will know before she speaks that something has changed in her life and she needs to say it aloud to someone. The weather 3 days out, the exact moment a season turns, not the calendar date, but the actual moment the air shifts and something decides it is time. My wife has noticed. She says sometimes I seem to be listening to something she cannot hear. She asks what I am listening to. I tell her the mountain. She laughs because she thinks I am being poetic. I have not told her about the rules yet. We do not have children. When we do, I will tell her about the rules. I will sit them down young enough that the rules become part of them before they think to question them, the way the rules became part of me. I will have them repeat the rules back until the rules are as natural as breathing. And the last one, the one I will say with a different quality in my voice, the one I will make them repeat every year until they are old enough to understand what they are repeating. If it looks like someone you know, but something is wrong with the way it moves, it is not someone you know. You do not speak to it. You do not run. You look at the ground and you walk home, and you do not look back, and you do not speak of what you saw until morning. There is one rule my father added that was not in the original set, a rule he learned not from his mother, but from the mountain itself, in 30 years of listening. I have added it to the list. It is the simplest one. When the mountain speaks, you do not have to understand it. You only have to be willing to listen. I think that is all it has ever asked of us, that there is someone standing at the ridge who is willing to be still long enough to hear it. We are the listeners. We have always been the listeners. That is what the hollow has been trying to tell all of us in the only language it has for 230 years. Some things do not need to be feared. Some things only need to be remembered. My family had always had rules, Now I understand why.